A library in every primary school. Come on, Rachel. Show the secondary school some love as well.
Hello, it's Craig and Dave here. We're back with another At the Chalk Face, and today we're talking about the announcement that Rachel Reeves has turned round and said, by the end of this parliament, we're going to be putting a library in every single primary school. Dave, why didn't you just say the other week how important literacy was?
I told you, didn't I say in the last episode, not a week goes by without somebody mentioning literacy in the curriculum, and you just can't get away from it. And well, it wasn't the headline thing that Rachel Reeves was talking about in her speech at the Labour Party conference in 2025, but it was raised. Yes, a library in every primary school by the end of the parliament. I want to read you a quick quote, Craig, if that's okay. For those people that haven't followed the Labour Party conference, this might have escaped you. So let me just tell you word for word exactly what Rachel Reeves said, apart from the headline announcement that we've already just stated. So she said, I remember as a kid that my school library was turned into a classroom because there were more students than space. Think about the message that sends about government's priorities. How little value is placed on opportunities for kids to learn and to grow, to explore their interests independently, or to find a quiet space to study that isn't always on offer at home.
Mm,
So there
mm,
you go. That's what it's all
mm.
about. I mean, I love the bit about there were more students than space. I mean, that's a real issue, isn't it, in schools today? A lot of these schools were built decades and decades and decades ago when there were, physically less children. Simple as
Yeah.
that. And now, we're looking for classroom space to accommodate them all. And so, all sorts of things have been turned into classrooms over the years. And I'm sure you remember the porter
I was
cabins.
about to
And they still
say.
exist, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's the temporary porter cabins that will be there just for a year while we get a solution, and then 10 years later you walk in and there's buckets everywhere because they've got to catch the leaks and they're still being used. That's it. The PE department annoyed because the second sports hall at the end of the field is no longer a sports hall; it's now turned into temporary classrooms and everything in between. Yeah, it's true. Interesting though, she points out about the importance of libraries and get them into primary schools, but what about secondary schools? Where's our love? I mean, I get it. I guess she's saying introduce the love of reading and literacy young and encourage it there. Start there's a lot more primary schools than secondary schools, obviously. So that's big. It's a lofty goal. But yeah, kind of like so it's really not important once you hit age 11, then, Dave.
I, yeah, I don't know if it's just me, and maybe I'm just sort of blinkered because I'm a secondary school teacher, but it just feels like every announcement is always aimed at the primary sector, um, or the preschoolers or whatever. It just feels to me like there's so little being announced for secondary. I mean, one of the headline announcements from Keir Starmer was that he wants to scrap the existing Labour policy of 50% of students going on to university and replace that with two-thirds of students go to either university or an apprenticeship. And that's absolutely fine, but again, that's kind of post 16, right? Post 18. I mean, what about the bit in the middle? It just feels like secondary schools just don't get any attention. It feels like, oh, everything's fine and dandy in secondary schools. They've all got libraries, so it's not a problem. And I don't know that that's true. It feels a bit of a shame that not a lot of a spotlight is being put onto the secondary sector.
You just said the last school that we both taught at, I remember they had quite a decent sized library. In the last couple of years we were there, it got turned into a sixth form, a brand new dedicated sixth form block, and the library ended up being shunted to a space somewhere else in the school, which was 25% of the size.
Definitely shrinking. I think I think they're definitely shrinking. But let's reminisce for a little bit, Craig, because we love to sort of think about our childhood and how things were back in the 1970s and 80s, which for the teachers watching, some of you are older than us, so you probably remember this quite fondly. But tell me about your library at your school when you were a kid.
Well, I hate to say it, but I had the absolute stereotypical librarian. And of course, I appreciate all librarians out there are not like this. I am not trying to compound the stereotype, but my librarian was was the lady with the glasses on the end of the nose who looked at you very sternly, and everything had to be quiet. And if you said too much, it was always shh and the fingers on the lips. Just, so I had the stereotypical British librarian. But even because, yeah, I mean, yes, we are older. I'm approaching my 50s. You're in your 50s, Dave. So obviously, yeah, sorry. So, yes, we had a computer room, but they were 186s, 286s. There was one of them. If you had the internet at home, it was a dial up on a 14K modem. So we didn't have Wikipedia and everything and all these sources we have today. So the library was still a primary source of research. But even then, I wouldn't go there as a kid unless I was forced to go there. We'd have sessions in classrooms. We're going to go to the library and do an activity, and that meant you got shoved down the activity end where you were at least allowed to talk a little bit. But I wasn't. Um, I I never had the passion or thought of going to the library to do research. Even as an A-level student, I didn't. And when I did, the books were not really relevant to what I wanted to do. So me as a child never saw the benefit of the library. Now, obviously, as an adult, different now, but I never really used it. We were always forced and told to go and use it. And it was just one of those things. Oh, we got a library session. Oh, we've got to go to the library. It's like, I think, typical student. How on earth, as teachers, we manage to try and get them to read beyond the subject now with all the distractions of smartphones and Internet of Things in that age? I'm sure we'll talk about that and whether the library is even relevant in 2025. Dare I pose that question later? But yeah, as a student, it was one of those like, oh, got the library, right? Oh, and after the library, I've got RS. Don't like that either. Incidentally, I think RS is one of the most important subjects we can teach students in today's day and age. Every RS teacher gets angry at me. It's so important. Go on. What about you, Dave? You always have a decent anecdote. Was it a similar experience for you, or totally different?
No, it was a very, very similar experience. But I mean, I remember the, Encyclopedia Britannica in its original form, and it was like 20 volumes or something like this, and the knowledge of the world was contained within. And I remember when Encarta came along.
Yeah,
Do you
that's
remember that
right. Yeah,
on
on
a
CD.
CD? And all of a sudden, Encyclopedia Britannica, that was gone. You didn't need to go to the index page now and find out that what you wanted to know about the Amazon rainforest was in volume 6 from chapter 3 on page 1049. No, now you could get to anything about the Amazon instantly, together with pictures and sounds and multimedia clips, and it was absolutely amazing. But I'm getting ahead of myself because I remember, you go into the library and the Dewey Decimal System,
Oh,
yeah, the Dewey Decimal System. There was that was mind-boggling to me when I was just like 11, 12 years old. Um, but of course, all the books had to be in the right order, in the right place, and oh, God forbid you would take one out and not put it back correctly. But what we used to do as kids is, I don't know if you remember this, but on the inside page of the book, they would stamp with an ink stamp when the book was due to be returned. So quite often they would give you, say, a week or 2 weeks before you had to bring the book back. And the librarian would stamp it with a date with this ink stamp. And if you didn't bring it back by then oh, so we were all a little bit scared to even take a book out, if I'm honest. But anyway, What we used to do is go round and try and find the book that had the oldest date on it. When was the last time somebody took this book out, right?
So I've got a
And
library session. I might as well turn it into a fun challenge.
and there were some books in there that were so old and so inaccessible that you were like, who is ever reading this? And you would pick it off the
Yeah.
shelf and you would, open the cover and have a look at the last date stamp. And some of them were, I'm sure, from before when I was even born. I mean, we're talking like this book hasn't been taken out for 10 years.
Yeah, and this is the difference, isn't it, between having any initiative, let's not say library, just because you put it in place and you have it, and then obviously how you maintain it and the relevance of making the most of it. And obviously there'll be schools that fund this better and they put a higher priority. You've got, a highly passionate and skilled librarian, and they're also getting in journals and they're looking at the range of subjects and at A level and making sure to get supporting stuff with students. So, having a library, sure, is that first step, but that doesn't mean it's going to be successful and be useful. And I was thinking back to have I ever used a library? And of course, I don't want to head off into university because we're really focusing on the secondary and primary schools here. That was probably the first time I really properly engaged. It never happened, even during my A levels. And by then, we did have 56K modems, and I was using AOL, and I was doing research on Alta Vista. Oh, blimey, all search engines that don't exist anymore. I was using early versions of Wikipedia and stuff, and but at university I was using a library. And of course, the difference is the the investment there is very different. That's the thing, isn't it? I would go there as much to access past journals, papers, research, and dissertations from previous students because they were all published and placed in the library. So yeah. Oh, I've just reminded me of something, Dave. I don't know if you're going to want me to mention this. In your previous role as a senior leader, because you led a technology strategy role across the school, didn't you? Weren't you championing a initiative to basically turn the school completely paperless, axe the library, put everything on ebooks, a tablet in every hand? So you were basically running the death of the library initiative at your school, weren't you? Sorry if I put you on the spot. Wasn't that
I,
you?
yeah, I was responsible for the death of the library initiative. We didn't call it that, but yeah, I mean, my vision was that every child would have a device, right? It happened to be an Apple iPad, but it could have been a Chromebook, it could have been, anything. It doesn't really matter. The point is, every child would have a device. And I thought instead of the child going to the library, bring the library to the child so that they can access all the materials, all the books, fiction, non-fiction, everything on their device. And if we did that, then we wouldn't need a library because everything is virtual, right? So I thought, well, that would be fantastic. And of course, there was a bit of hoo-ha at the time about, oh, reading on a device isn't very good for the eyes, or it doesn't have the same sort of experience. So I thought, well, there's nothing wrong with Amazon Kindles or other ebook readers, and so my plan was literally to give every single child an ebook reader, and they would essentially have all the books they need on their device, and I could just get rid of the library completely. And of course, I was thinking this also opens the door to audio books, audio visuals, but importantly, the student would have all the textbooks they need and more, thousands and thousands of books, literally at their fingertips. So there was no more heavy backpacks, carrying textbooks around. There was no more having to go to the library to get that book out. No, instead, this would be, a real innovation. A 21st century library is no library.
Sounds amazing. Sounds like a utopia of technology supporting literacy. How did it turn out, Dave?
Well, I never got it off the ground. It was part of my bigger plan. I mean, I got as far as, devices in the hands of every student, but I went down a kind of teaching and learning approach and never quite got to the library. But I was sensing a bit of resistance anyway, if I'm honest. I mean, there were people that were saying, oh, books are more about the tactile experience. You need to be able to feel them and smell them. And I don't know about this ebook reader thing. And I knew parents, were going to be a little bit disgruntled with it. And was I going to convince the senior team that, this was worth doing? Did the benefits outweigh the disadvantages? And in the end, I just thought, this isn't a hill to die on. It's not worth it. We can, infuse a lot of technology into our school in lots of different ways to enhance teaching and learning without going 100% paperless and getting rid of the library. And it was a colleague of mine actually on the senior leadership team that was charged with creating a new library, and we were kind of, pulling in different directions. I was head of digital strategy, they were head of literacy, the library, and everything that meant. And it kind of felt like we were pulling in different directions because I wanted to go completely paperless and they wanted to create something far more tactile and invigorating and interesting for students. And so those two strategies were just not compatible. And in the end, I just conceded it because I thought, this doesn't matter as much to me as it does to you, so I'm not going to fight you for it.
Ah,
And
okay.
their vision of the library, though, I am so glad that I did
Ah,
not follow this through.
oh, you're so glad you didn't follow yours through, you mean?
Yeah, so glad I didn't follow my
Ah,
vision through because
yes.
I think it would have
Yeah.
been the wrong decision.
Yeah. Okay. This was how long ago was it? Because this I've got a follow-on question, which is you'll see where I'm going. So how long ago was that? Was that sort of 2015, 2020? I mean, of course, well, way back now, isn't it?
Yeah, this is 10 years ago now.
Like 10 years ago. So, I mean, I talked about when I was at school and the internet just starting to be a thing, but obviously 10 years ago, a big thing. Now, 2025, I have to pose a question. I mean, we're in 2025, 5G, 6G around the corner, everyone with smartphones, although also we're getting pushback about whether they should be allowed in schools, whether they should be used, and government advice they shouldn't, all the benefits. But we've got tablets, we've got internet, we've got Wikipedia, we've got the entire world's knowledge in the palm of a student's hand. We do have that now. You don't need to roll the tablets out to people. Now, obviously, in the last few years, AI, so you don't even need to search for stuff and go through your links in Google and find the diamond in the rough. I mean, yes, now we've got issues of bias and credibility and hallucinations, but what I'm getting at, what is even the purpose now in 2025, let alone in 2030, which is only like four and a bit years away? What is the purpose of a library now at all? I could see the
Mm.
argument I was at school, though I didn't get it as a student. But what's the point in them at all? And I don't just hear that, oh, we need the tactile experience of picking up paper and smelling an old book. No, I'm sorry. Because I don't want to upset every English teacher here or every book enthusiast because I still pick up and read books for fun. Um, I don't see the point in a library in a secondary school in 2025. Oh, I've said it.
Okay, I disagree. Like I
Okay,
say, I have
brilliant.
been converted to the light on this one. Um, for me, a library is a place of inspiration. It's a place where you should want to go because it's a place where you can be inspired and you can learn collaboratively. So I don't think we should, maybe we need to completely change the name. In one of the schools I worked at, we ditched the library and instead we called it the Learning Centre, which I find a little bit strange because the entire school is a learning centre. So how have we got a learning centre inside the learning centre? And I think we could have probably done better with the name. But the principle was right, which is let's not have a library because of all the connotations and stereotypical views of what that means. But instead, let's have a resource centre, a learning centre. And so when you went into the learning centre, it had different zones. And so it wasn't just shelves of books and a few tables and a few computers in the corner. No, it was zoned. And I think the library in 2025 is an inspirational place, which is ever evolving and changing, and it's not static. And if there's one thing that I think that schools should do with a library, if they're not already, and many are, is turn it into a place that's dynamic and not static. And by that, I mean it's changing. It's a place where you encourage dialogue and conversation and collaborative working. And you have make spaces where you can really inspire students. So I'm going to give you a few examples. Um, I think, for example, to say you had a section that was about computing in your library, and I think all subjects should probably have a section, and it almost becomes a competition to make your section the most inspiring and great place for students to be. And I think that would be amazing. But I can see in a computer science section, which is my subject, or I'm talking about it, that I might have a history of computing in there. Let's get some ZX Spectrums, some Commodore 64s, some other devices and bits and pieces, old mobile phones. Let's turn it into a mini museum where you have got little plaques and things that the students can read about these things. They can touch them, pick them up, handle them. And then I think what we can do is have posters of pioneers in the subject, and let's focus on those women in technology and ethnic minorities that have made such a massive difference to our field. Let's make this a place where you see the pioneers, you understand their story on the shelves. Let's put biographies, let's put the latest books, let's put things in there about the latest technology, and don't just let them sit on the shelves forever. Change them regularly, have real features.
So this sounds much more interesting. I would go to this inspirational learning zone. You won me over. You've kind of answered my next question then, because I put to you a bit rhetorically then. So who's responsible then for filling this library with interesting items and books? It's well, you kind of answer the question. You can't just turn around and say, oh well, it's the librarian, and maybe they chat to the head of English. If we're going to create a modern 2025 version of a library in primary and secondary schools with like learning zones inspiration, then where do you argue the responsibility lies for making that inspirational? You kind of answered it, but I'm guessing what you're saying is every head of department needs to be taking a lead, a responsibility for this.
Yeah, and I think that's another big problem that we've got in schools at the moment, is that the library is seen as someone's responsibility, right? It will be a librarian. I mean, give them any title you want. It doesn't really matter. They're a librarian. And they may be doing some good stuff like, little book clubs and literacy interventions and inspiring displays and getting in the latest books and all the rest of it. Yeah, that I'm not saying they're not doing a good job. They are. But when you make it everybody's responsibility, and the heads of subject have to take responsibility for their part of the library, and it's part of the thing that the senior leadership team um, look at as part of, I don't know what we call them, the sort of your performance criteria, what are the things they're looking at? Yes.
It's going to be visited at each year by your line manager. What are you doing for the learning zone? What have you done this year? Oh, I can't ignore it. I'm going to be judged against it, like my exam results, like my extracurricular activities. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't, I'm conscious that I'm putting more work onto already overloaded and overstressed heads of subject. But I want you to be inspired by your subject as well. I want you to be a leader of your subject. I want you to want to inspire students and to be invested in the latest literature, invested in the latest ideas, to be thinking creatively about what could we do as an innovative display in this area. And I think your job is to come up with the ideas and the titles and what you want this place to be. And then I think it can be for other support staff to realize the vision for you. So I think the head of subject has the vision, and then they don't have the time, the effort, and the energy to realize that vision, but they can empower other people to do it. And as I say, this school that I worked at, where we had the learning center, I think one of the most innovative things that they did was they invested in a member of the support staff who was a display technician. Their job was simply to make the school look beautiful. That was their job, okay, full time. And as part of that, the library falls into that, and they would liaise with me as a head of subject and say, right, what can we do about your corridor space? What can we do about your classroom displays? What can we do about your presence in the library? And so I was able to come up with all sorts of, you know, great ideas. For example, I would say, I want a computer with its lid taken off, and I want all these components to kind of be exploded onto a display. And then I want them each to have a plaque about what they're for and what they do. And so I had the vision, and then that person would go away and actually, because they were an expert in their field, because they were essentially, someone that was into art and sculpture and things like that, they would create this thing that was kind of half in my head, but what they created was far, far better than that. And I think that's sometimes where the investment needs to be. I think what schools are doing is they're shrinking their support staff because of shrinking budgets. I think that's a mistake. I think your support staff are the real backbone of your school. They can realize the vision of teachers.
True, and that you hit on my last point I was going to make. And the thing is to realise the vision that you're talking about there, and every department being fully invested. What we're really talking about is every department and every subject head allocating a portion of their budget, and of course that is going to get a bunch of my budget's already not tight enough to pay for the stuff I want. And I don't have an easy answer to that. I remember it as myself shrinking budgets each year, rising fixed costs on the school and electricity and gas and everything else, and teachers' pay rises and pensions, and what's left. And now you're telling me to give up a portion of that to create this inspirational space. But if this is going to be done properly, and we're going to re-envision this, the modern learning zone, or whatever we're calling it, of 2025, then it needs investment. And these are tough decisions that senior leadership teams are going to have to think about. Where's that importance? Otherwise, it will no doubt just become, yes, we've got a library, which I think is the thing I started off with, as saying, well, what's the point now? There's not any point really, unless you turn it into something which is useful and of benefit. You're just ticking a box. So that's not an easy challenge. I'm not going to pretend it is.
There's no easy answers. I mean, I can glibly say, put more money into your library, put more money into your support staff, make your school an inspiring place for students to be. And everyone wants to achieve that, but they don't necessarily, as you say, have the budget. I would say they don't have the strategy and the vision. Look at your staffing is what I would say to school leaders, and particularly multi-academy trust, because they've got an awful lot more freedom and an awful lot more hierarchy to play with. And I would just question, do you need that many senior leaders? What if you had one less senior leader and two extra support staff? What could you do with them? What could you do with them for the students? What difference might it make? Now, I know that's really controversial, but we know we're never short of a controversy here at the Chalk Face. And I think there are too many people at the top that often make themselves look important and necessary. But when you strip it back to what do you actually do, what difference do you actually make? Um, I wonder. I do think there's some room there, and I've said it before. I'll say it again. I think a lot of these head teachers and these MAT CEOs, for sure, they pay too much. Pay too much. I think the money's in the system. I do think the money is in the system. The problem is the system is so skewed to high salaries at the moment for a small number of staff that that's really where your problem is.
So if you're not making a difference at the Chalk Face, then is it good value for money? We should make a channel out of that, Dave. Right. Well, look, thank you for joining us for another episode about the Chalk Face, and we'll see you again soon. We're no doubt with our opinions of what's in the news. Take care for now. Bye bye.